You ever worried about if you are prepared for retirement? Are you worried about your kids? Are they prepared for retirement? Do you have any idea of how much money that you should have for retirement? You probably don't, and you're not alone. Don't worry about it, folks, because we're going to crack the code today for everyone at any age to be successful financially. Welcome to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. My name's Joe Anderson, president here at Pure Financial Advisors. And the show, of course, is not the show without the big man. There's Big Al Clopine. Hello, Big Al.
How you doing, buddy?
We're going to crack the code today.
I think so. I can't wait, right? Every age, there's something that you need to be doing.
Yeah, every single age, there's something a little bit, there's little tweaks along the way. Because if I were to ask you a question, when should you first start saving for retirement? Right? Your first paycheck. But who does that? Nobody. You're 20, you're looking for a spouse. Beer money, you're saving for a new car. Then you hit your 30s, right? Then you find your spouse, and then you have some kids. Then you hit your 40s. Well, where's the money going there? Oh, that's right, private school, education. You hit your 50s, now the kids are back in the house. Now they're on your payroll again. Then you hit your 60s, you're like, what happened to the time? What happened to the time? We're gonna crack the code today, so whatever age you're at, you can make sure that you are successful financially. That's today's financial focus. Latest survey by Charles Schwab asked, where our stresses fall? You know, what are we most stressed about in regards to our finances? Number one, of course it is, saving enough for retirement. But the problem is, we don't know how much money that we should be saving, how much money that we should have. Let's figure it out. Let's bring in the big man, Big Al Clopine.
So cracking the code for every age. I love the topic, and there's things that you need to be thinking about and considering at every age. Right off the bat, we're going to talk about to assess your progress regardless of your age. And then number two, the best strategies, or at least the things you ought to be thinking about at each age. And then we're going to have some examples of someone that does it just right. Well, guess what? Most of us don't do it just right. So we're going to talk about what happens if you're a little bit behind. We'll go over strategies that way. And Joe, I think so many people, we can come into our office and they have no idea, do I have enough? And virtually at any age. And so that's why I'm kind of excited about today.
Yeah, you get two types, right? You have people that have millions that they can't sleep at night. Are we going to be okay? It's like, yeah, you're all right. And then you got other people that don't really have much, and they're like, we're having a ball. And that's fine. I mean, to each their own. I mean, it's your life. But here's, and don't shoot the messenger here, right? Every time we kind of talk about how much money that you should have, this is just guidelines, right? Just at least get you in the same area code. Fidelity put this down, and it's a useful tool. So when you look at age 30, so if you're 30 years old, you should have, hypothetically, 1 times your salary. So 30-year-olds making $40,000 a year, well, they should have $40,000 saved for their retirement. So if we move up the ladder here, let's say at age 45, well, 45-year-olds should have roughly 4 times. So a 45-year-old might be making, I don't know, just to make the math really easy, $100,000. Well, they should have $400,000 saved. So you get the gist here. So 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and the ladder goes up. So if you're 67, you should have 10 times. I mean, these numbers are going to get ridiculous on us here a little bit, Al. And, you know, because it's like, oh, wow. Because that's when we got to start here, right? If you start at 30 and you move your way up, then it's a lot easier to catch up.
Well, and here's the problem. Hardly anyone starts in their 20s, right? And so we're almost all of us are catching up to some extent.
Almost all of us are behind, right?
And so I guess what I want to say here is when you look at this, don't get too discouraged. This would be an ideal scenario. And this was put out by Fidelity, and they've kind of had this for a number of years. If everything goes perfect, this is pretty good. But realize that it's not necessarily true for all of us. So, Joe, let's start with in our 20s. And I think maybe the first thing to consider is probably paying yourself first, which is a very important thing. Saving. Saving is difficult if you save the last. And what I mean by that is if you pay your rent, pay your mortgage, pay your bills, and then at the end of the month, whatever's left over, you save it, guess what? You generally end up spending the money and you don't save anything. So if you reverse that, if you pay yourself first, like in a 401k, for example, so it's automatic, then it happens, you know, out of mind. And
if there's anything that anyone gets out of the show today, I mean, this is it. Pay yourself first. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. It doesn't matter. Pay yourself first. You deserve it, right? But when you pay yourself last, Al, it never gets done. Oh, I got bills. I got the credit cards. I got this. I got the... But then you figure out, well, if you pay yourself first, and if it's out of sight, out of mind, we're able to live within our means.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so let's go over a couple other things. So another one would be investing. So especially when you're younger, favor low-cost, globally diversified equity funds. As you get older, you know, maybe you have a little bit more bonds, a little bit more safety in your portfolio. But if you're in your 20s, you've got a lot of time to ride out the volatility of the market. So favor equities. Equities are volatile. Yes, they are. But over the long term, they tend to perform better. Another thing, Joe, is insurance. And insurance, make sure you've got health and auto. That's required. Right? And then think about renter's insurance in your 20s, and in some cases, if you buy a home, of course, you got other kinds of insurance, but make sure you got the right kind of insurance for what your needs are.
Next from there is an emergency fund, right? So you want to have a little bit of cash on hand just in case that car breaks down, and then pay off high credit cards. So hopefully, you know, you get out of the cycle of building up debt. It's okay to have a running balance of debt as long as you keep control of it. Where people fall into traps is that they get out of control with the overall debt, and it's all of a sudden a cycle. So yeah, have credit. Credit is key, but make sure that you keep on top of it. But then a savings plan. I mean, this is Joe Anderson's savings rules, okay? First thing, save into your 401k to the match, okay? Because that's free money. So if you work for a corporation, you put in your 1-2%, they match 2%, put in 2%. That's good, right? Then from there, switch to a Roth IRA. And if you're still saving, go back to the 401k and fill that up. And if you can still save more, then open up a brokerage account and start saving there. Because what people do well, and we talk about tax diversification all the time, is that they start with the 401k plan, pre-tax, 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 and then all of a sudden by the time they turn 50, 60, it's like, wow, I got a lot of money, but it's all going to be taxed at ordinary income. So by doing this, this already gets you diversified from a tax perspective when you are saving. So, I mean, these rules apply for any age, but we're just starting at 20 because I guess that's
our first decade, right?
That's the first step.
Working, yeah, for most people. So let's go over a quick little example so you kind of know what we're talking about. So this would be someone at age 24. And this would be someone that's making $40,000 a year. Maybe they're a young professional with a great future, but they start out at about $40,000 a year. And so we have an example. If they save $450 a month at 7% interest, by the time they hit age 30, they'll have about $40,000. That's 1 times. That would be a good goal. It's very difficult to be saving that much in your early 20s, but this would be ideal if you can do that.
Yeah, another quick step or rule of thumb, you know, try to save between 10 and 20% of your income. If you can stay in those ranges, you know, you're going to be very successful long-term financially. Hey, we got to take a short break, but before we go, we have another special offer for all of you Your Money, Your Wealth listeners. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, and we're going to crack the financial code.
You got it. Success at any age, Joe.
Cracking that financial code. Succeed in your finances at any age. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson, certified financial planner, and Alan Clopine, he's the CPA. We're talking about succeeding, cracking the financial code, succeeding financially at any age. Go to our website, yourmoneywealth.com, click on our special offer, you'll get our white paper. If you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, doesn't matter. We're going to give you tips and suggestions and strategies on how to succeed at any of those ages. But before we go any further, let's see how you did on the true-false question.
As a first-time home buyer, I can use up to $10,000 from my IRA to buy a home without incurring an early withdrawal penalty. And that's actually a true statement, because typically you got to wait till 59 and a half to be able to pull dollars out without penalty. You can take $10,000, to buy a home, your first home, which is, it's actually pretty liberal. They allow someone that has not owned a home in the last 2 years, that's considered a first-time home buyer. Married couple, each can do $10,000, so it would be up to $20,000. But Joe, we don't necessarily recommend that. An IRA is really for retirement.
Yeah. $10,000 down payment here in Southern California. I don't know,
and that's not going to go very far.
It doesn't go very far.
Yeah.
So let's go on with our topic about looking at or following someone's life. Before we left the break, right, we were talking about savings in your 20s. And then Alan went through this example of saying, hey, we got to get one time. So this individual saved about 15% of their overall income, $40,000. They got to that one-time income, $40,000, because they saved starting at age 24. So now let's go to the 30s. We have that $40,000 saved. Now what do, right? Because once we hit, we need 3 times. So that bar just keeps getting higher and higher on us. So, of course, hopefully we have a little bit of a raise. So now they're making $70,000. So you have to increase your overall savings too. Here's another huge mistake that we see is that as incomes go up, guess what? Lifestyle goes up, savings doesn't do anything. You got to make sure that you increase your savings as well when you receive those raises and bonuses. I mean, style creep is a big deal. Hey, well, I finally made some money. Now let's buy the brand new cars and all the toys and everything else, and they forget about the savings.
Well, it's true, and then kids come into the picture, and as a father, that's you want to kind of spoil your kids, and it happens. And of course you want to save for college at the same time. It's hard to save for your retirement and for college and for a home, right? And to do what you need to do for retirement. So it's challenging. But I think, Joe, when you think about your 30s, of course savings, continue saving is probably most important, but let's talk about emergency fund. By now you want to have probably 3 to 6 months of emergency fund, and it somewhat depends upon the stability of your income. Like let's say you've got a very stable government job, maybe 3 months is fine. But let's say you've got a construction job and you never know where your next job is going to be. You might want to actually have 6 months or even a year depending upon the stability. So at this age you want to start making sure you got plenty of money in that. Another thing, of course, Joe, is a down payment on a home. And generally in your 30s, you're starting to think about that. 20% is kind of a guideline. Difficult in Southern California, though, because homes are expensive.
Well, you know, that's where people fell into trouble in the financial crisis, is that, you know, these liar loans and people were putting 1 or 2% down. 20% is a pretty good number. So you have to start building up that cash reserves and savings. If you have children, you know, maybe looking at putting a couple of bucks away for 529 plans. However, don't jeopardize your overall financial picture for college education. Your retirement, you can't get a loan for retirement, right? You can get loans for college. And Big Al, I don't know, it might be free someday, right?
It could be, you never know.
Insurance. You want to look at your insurance coverages. At this point, you probably need life insurance as your income increases as you start a family. If you're single, you don't necessarily need life insurance, in my opinion. But as you build a family, as you get married, yeah, then your income might be very dependent upon your spouse or your children. So looking at life insurance, disability, especially as you're young, right? When you're active, you could get hurt, you know, and then all of a sudden you can't work, you can't pay the bills. So the biggest, I guess, asset you might have in your 20s, 30s, and 40s is not your net worth. It could be your ability to earn that income. So making sure that you're coverage there. And then maybe it might be time, Al, to start thinking about an estate plan.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you actually should think about that even in your 20s, but certainly by your 30s, at least have a will and financial power of attorneys, medical power of attorneys. But really, you ought to be thinking about a living trust, particularly in California, particularly if you own any real estate. It helps with probate and things of that sort.
Hey, let's switch. Let's go to our 40s, and let's bring in a guest. Let's bring in Matt Balderston. He's a certified financial planner, senior advisor at Pure Financial Advisors. He knows a lot more about planning in their 40s than I do, so let's switch it over to Matty B.
Thanks, Joe, and welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Al.
So we've got into our 20s and 30s. Let's now talk about our 40s. So what are some things that 40-year-olds should consider?
Well, assuming you have the insurance and the emergency savings we talked about in the 30s, 40s is one of the early, first times in your life where your income is really starting to increase. So you have a great opportunity to start maxing out various plans, investing as much as you can. But it can also be a challenge because that's when your kids are often hitting the more expensive club years or whatever else things they're doing and saving for college, et cetera. So there's a lot of conflict in the 40s.
Yeah, it seems like there's conflicts every year, but 40s in particular as the kids get older.
Yeah, absolutely. We both have experienced that.
We have experienced that. So let's go over an example of someone in their 40s. To continue our example, so someone that has $210,000 to start, and let's say their salary now goes up to $110,000, they would need to save $1,375 at a 7% rate of return to end up with $660,000, which would be 6 times. But let's also get more real here. A lot of 40-year-olds don't have much of any savings, so what should they do? So in our second example here, same salary. So in this particular case, this individual is going to have to save a little bit more to try to get caught up. Saving $2,500 a month will end up at 4 times. It's not the 6 times, but at least, Matt, it's better than nothing. But let's talk about that, because I think a lot of people watching this show right now, either themselves or their kids or their grandkids, feel like they're behind. What are some things people can do?
Well, they're certainly not alone. I think if you look at the statistics, most people, especially using those numbers, are behind in those ages. And if you do look, even increasing your savings at that point you still haven't caught up to those people that started in your 30s, so it reinforces the importance of starting back as early as you can. But really, those maximizing contributions, whenever you get a bonus, putting half of that or even all of it into your 401k plan. Every time you get a raise, if you get a 3% raise, increase your 401k contribution by 1%. There are lots of little things you can do that do add up, and compounding is really the name of the game on this. And I use this quote every chance I get from Einstein, which is compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe.
Yes, but this is hard, right? Mm-hmm. Because you've been working and you've been sacrificing because maybe you started saving, you have kids, you feel like you haven't really done the vacations, that you want to have great memories. So how does all that factor in?
Balance. That is one of my favorite words in meetings. Yeah, you want to plan, you want to balance living for today with planning for the future. And the problem is if you wait too long, if you spend too much time on the living for now part, then you kind of have to make those sacrifices later to catch up. Because one of the things in your example that you'll notice is that even though that person nearly doubled their monthly savings, they're actually further behind 10 years later. If you look at the math there, they're more than $210,000 behind. So they do have plenty of money. So I'm not trying to discourage anything. Don't ever think that you shouldn't start because you can't get as far, because you can catch up even more later. 50s and 60s, once your kids are out of college. I've seen a tremendous number of clients just max out massive amounts of savings in those last 5 to 10 years of employment and really do a lot of catching up. But of course, it's harder to do if you haven't done something a little earlier. So the 40s is a great time to get that really
and I think that's a good point. I mean, one of the key points here is that it's never too late, really, to improve your situation. But let's go back to your 40s. Of course, another way to look at it is how to, what you're spending money on. Going through your checkbook, seeing what could potentially be cut out. Now, this is painful for a lot of people. So, and some people like to budget, although very few.
That's true.
Maybe a few accountants. But most of us don't like to budget. But how should we look at our expenses?
Well, just about everything we spend money on, there's probably a way of reducing that expense. You could get all the way down to the level of cutting coupons and so on, but let's talk about someone that maybe if you haven't saved a lot, chances are you have some credit card debt, some other kind of debts, things like that, and you've heard, I'm sure most people have heard, about as you pay off the credit cards one by one, you add that payment to the next credit card so you can work your way down. Another way to look at that is that once you've paid off credit card bills, take whatever you were paying in credit cards and put that directly into a savings account of some kind, an investment account, increasing your 401k and so on. So that could be a really good way to do it.
I think that's a good point, because if you can make this less painful, if you can add to savings when you get a raise or a bonus, if you can figure out some strategies, maybe you pay down some credit cards or you pay down a car loan, you got a little bit more income, apply that to savings, you'll be in a lot better spot.
And something that actually applies very much so today is with the low interest rates and mortgage rates being as low as they are. if you can refinance and save $200 a month on your payment, don't just assume you have $200 more to spend. Immediately use that savings to increase your savings.
Matt, great information, and of course, as we mentioned, any age, whether you're 20s, 30s, all the way to 60s, even 70s, you can put yourself in a better spot if you feel like you're behind. So anyway, thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure.
And Joe?
Hey, go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Make sure that you click on our special offer today. It's cracking the financial code. You can succeed financially at any age. It's a gift giver. The holidays are over, but what the heck? Give it to your kids, your grandkids. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer, cracking the financial code, succeeding financially at any age. Got to take another break and we'll wrap up the show. Don't go anywhere. Hey, welcome back to the show. Wrapping things up here. We're cracking the financial code. Go to our website, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer. Let's see how you did on the true-false question.
I cannot contribute to an IRA when I have fully maxed out my 401k with my employer. That's actually false, and a lot of people would probably miss that. You actually can fund an IRA and a 401k, even if you max out that 401k, and I think, Joe, a lot of people miss that.
I mean, this is a really good strategy that people need to look at, especially when they're trying to catch up. Right? If I'm a little bit behind in my 50s and 60s, and hey, I'm fully funding the 401k and you're not taking advantage of the IRA, this is another quick step that people can do.
So let's go back to our example for someone in their 50s. So we're kind of continuing where we left off. So this is a 50-year-old with a beginning savings of about $660,000. So what should they do to get to that the next level? Right? So in this particular case, our young professional now is doing quite well, making a couple $100,000 a year, which is fantastic. Monthly savings then needs to be $1,580, right? 7% return. By age 60, then that person would have 1.8 million, which actually is 8 times the 200,000. So, and realize that these are just quick examples. No one gets the same salary for 10 years in a row. We're just giving you a sense of kind of how to get to where you need to get to. And Joe, I think it's, you know, in a lot of cases, people really have no idea where
right.
what to do.
It's a gauge. Right?
Yeah, it's a gauge. That's a good way to say it.
Am I close? Okay, if I'm not close, I need to step it up if I can turn it down or do whatever, retire early. So, you know, we're doing a little mini financial plan and we've never met any of you. So there you go. Hey, let's go to Ask the Experts.
My wife and I disagree about leaving money to one of our children. I'm older than my wife, so she will likely outlive me. Is there anything that I can do to keep my son from inheriting any of my money? And that's from Anonymous. I guess, Joe, I get a sense of why they didn't want to put their name on there, because maybe their son might be watching. What do you think?
Well, that's a unique question. So, okay, so it's your money, but you want to give it to your wife, but you don't want to give it to your kid. Then you die. I don't know. If it's both of your, if it's joint, I mean, if it's separate property, that's really easy. You can put it into a separate property trust and make sure that your spouse is the beneficiary of the trust. And then from there, it could go to a charity. Let's say if you want to leave Junior out in the street. But if it's joint property, Al.
It makes it tougher. I guess one thing that they could do is set up a living trust with an A-B provision. So the A trust, the spouse has control over. The B trust is the decedent trust. Your spouse gets income, but the beneficiaries are whoever you designate. So that could be a way to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. We're not attorneys. Heck of a question there, Carlsbad. Let's go to the next one.
All right, this is Rachel in Poway. Is there an ideal age range for purchasing long-term care insurance that typically pays off in a cost-benefit analysis? Well, Rachel, it's if you don't need long-term care, it's a waste. If you need it, it pays off. So what do you think, Joe?
Yeah, you got to get it before you need it, right? So the pricing after age 55, in my opinion, it gets pretty expensive. But if you go to a long-term care facility, it's going to be way more expensive, so it will always pay off. So I think that's a personal choice. Probably want to look to see what your premiums would be, and then you can do a cost analysis. So great question, though. Hey, running out of time, but what did we learn today? Well, we learned a lot. Savings, you know, we got to get a reality check on where you're at every step of the way here. Be sure that you save and continue to save and save more. Pay yourself first. If you got anything out of today, pay yourself first. Don't forget that emergency fund, because that's when people kind of get in this debt cycle. And if you're late, if you're behind, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. Just kind of figure out where you're at, put a plan together, and implement the overall strategy. If you need help with that, go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on our special offer this week. It's succeeding in any age. It's cracking the financial code. That's it for us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Big Al, great job, buddy.
That was a lot of fun.
We'll see you again next week. Again, go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com.